Good morning, good morning. Predicted Trades family. Hope everybody is doing well. Let's dig on into prep. So, yesterday we were dealing with that sizable gap up. We pretty much got a gap and go situation until we ran into a 4-hour squeeze top, right? And I believe myself and a couple of folks said when we were kind of hitting that high of day, hey, we're hitting a 4-hour squeeze top, we need to start getting ready for a potential reversal. ES pulled down to VWAP and then back up for a new high of day, but then ultimately closing back below trendline from the highs and in that 4-hour squeeze top. And like we've seen many times at 4-hour interactions, we get reversals. So we deal with this gap down now. And you know, this gap down could be a number of things. Hitting this 4-hour squeeze top being one of them. There was some news overnight that Russia was not happy and is making new threats against more folks. So as always, I suggest you start your day like I start my day when I get up. I always check in our stock news channel for what news was hitting overnight. And you can see Finland's ready to defend itself. And Russia's talking shit about Finland and Lithuania. So we have some renewed Russian threats going on out there. You could say that was part of the gap down. Oil, a number of reasons. But here we are, right? So it's just our job to read and react, not to know exactly what leads to it all. But ultimately, dealing with this gap down, we arrived overnight at a trend line from the lows and caught a bounce, breaking us out of the down channel. Got us back over key level and just settling near VWAP and that key level. It's probably going to open in this range. And yeah, pretty simple. Let's see if we can hold that key level. Let's see if we want to revisit 3,700 and this trend line. If we can hold either of those, we could get a bounce back up to start a partially fill this gap, or maybe even go for a full gap fill. But we do have that key 3741 above that we are now below, and which was resistance even in this gap up. And then we got our gap and go. Didn't quite make it to the daily 8, but now the daily 8 is stepping down right at yesterday's high. So let's see if we can hold these, head up to test 3741, the top of this wedge, for a potential break back out to get to the daily 8 and that 4-hour squeeze top again. If we can't get through 3741, if we lose 3708, 3700, we could accelerate quickly back on down to our key levels. And I marked just a little bit of zone of support. I noticed some bouncing at this area, so I just wanted to just throw in a small shaded zone there because it could cause a bounce again. And then we have that second Keltner down right on top of it at about this 3685 down to 3680, right? So if we give out that trend line and start to take out that zone, we're likely heading back to these lows and the bottom of that 4-hour squeeze. But we could easily just stay between key levels and chop around. We have our pre-market low and high right near key levels. So play the range until it breaks. Won't be afraid to take some longs here if it looks like we can catch a bounce, and won't be and I'll be ready to short if it looks like we're taking this level out and that pre-market low. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, we do have our moving averages above. We have been talking about a potential reversion to the mean this week. Just because we gap down doesn't mean that thesis is out. Sometimes after a strong day, a gap down is just an opportunity for them to reload for the trip. So let's see if that is what they want to do. Over to NQ. NQ did make it back to the daily 8 and rejected. Could also be lending to the downside. But you might notice that we are kind of arriving back near Friday's levels. So kind of getting rid of this gap up that we had. In fact, the low where we bounce, kind of near Friday's close. So, same premise here. A trend line could be drawn from the lows. And as you can see, it can be very different depending on what you connect to. You could say, by connecting to here, we're already below and now rejecting. And if you do it way out here at some of these lows, you could say, we're not quite there yet. Overall, I like to kind of use VWAP as the gauge. If we continue to just stay below VWAP, I'll be maybe leaning a little bit short, as we could stay below VWAP and every time we get to it, reject. Or if we can reclaim VWAP, might lean in more long, but we'll see. We're opening a hair lower than we did yesterday. For NQ, let's see if it can hold this 350, 300, and trend line, or we might be heading back to revisit 11,000, 11,100, and the second Keltner down, and this 2-day squeeze bottom. If we can hold these things, it'll obviously be trying to get back above 450 and 500 in a bid to get back to that daily 8. But, we also have to be cognizant sometimes a reversion to the mean can be the first mean that you get to, the first moving average. We don't have to get all the way to the 21 for a rejection and new lows off of the daily 8. So, let's see if we can hold, get back to or above the daily 8 for a true attempt at a reversion to the mean up above at about 12,000. Ready? Going to be a decent gauge. If you notice on NQ and others, we still had our NQ and ES, we still had our second Keltner way down, that we'd have to be giving out these trend line from lows to go tap it. On the ruddy, we got a nice gauge in that it's already bounced at its second Keltner. So, premise being, if we go back below that second Keltner for these squeeze bottoms, we will likely be seeing the other indices giving out their trend lines and heading down to their second Keltners. But if Ruddy can hold its second Keltner, basically its pre-market low, and start to get back to filling the gap, it'll be a great indication that the other indices will hold their trend lines and start working their way back up. YM. Come on, YM. Come on, toss. Work with me. Oh, complete freeze. There we go. So YM, same thing. Bouncing at trend line from lows. Got near that second Keltner. Struggling with VWAP. Let's see if it can stay above 30,000. Big psychological level. Not surprised that that's where she bounced. And it's only 140 points below where we are right now. So if YM can stay above 30,000, get back above VWAP, we can start to get back up to the range we were in yesterday. And that 30,500 near this 4-hour squeeze top. If we start to give those things out, likely heading back below 30,000 to this 4-hour squeeze bottom and the lows. Apple. So let's see. Apple trend line from the lows. We've got yesterday's trend line from the highs. So going to be opening in a wedge at a key level of support that for 132.6. So as long as that can hold and this trend line can hold, likely the indices will do the same, catch a bounce and come back to try to fill the gap. If the key level and trend line gives out, back to 131. And if things want to get saucy, back to 129. Where that 4-hour squeeze bottom sits. We could also just chop around in this range, partially coming back to fill the gap. So, also be ready for chop. AMD. Was weak at first, came back to test highs, like we talked about in our prep. Things can take a dip to retest those highs. Doesn't have to do a full gap fill to just, shore up some support at what used to be resistance. So AMD took that dip to Friday's highs, then took off with the market. Did not quite get up to the daily 8 and Keltner above. Stalled out at about 85, came on back. Now we're opening, actually a little right near where we were on Friday. So, reversion to the mean always still possible. There's a 2-hour squeeze on AMD up above at yesterday's highs. So let's see if it can hold this second Keltner as support, pre-market low, take back off to get back to yesterday's highs. Should it give out support? Heading back to 80 and 79. We do have that third Keltner and daily squeeze. I'm sorry, 2-day squeeze down below. Amazon. Amazon had a pretty decent day yesterday. I know some folks swung Amazon from Friday after she looked so strong and stayed up most of the day. She had a nice little gap and go, almost making it back to the daily 21 before stalling out outside of this 4-hour squeeze top and coming back. As you can see, if we come back to the squeeze, it is still intact. We have to stay outside of it and keep pushing for it to open up like it did here, right? We pushed against it, we kept going, it opens up and disappears. So 4-hour squeeze intact, basically opening right in the middle of it. And opening kind of at Friday's highs and those low wicks from yesterday's pre-market. So let's see if that 105, 106 can hold us and send us back up to fill the gap on Amazon back to 4-hour squeeze top in that 110. If 105, 106 gives out, it's back to 102 in this squeeze bottom. Kind of need BA to stay above the daily moving averages. It's had a good run, and BA will affect the market. It does have a decent amount of weight. So if BA starts to give out these daily moving averages and roll back, it's going to spell the same for the market, most likely, unless there's heavy rotation going on. So I'd like to see BA hold these daily moving averages, this 2-hour squeeze bottom, all stacked at about 132, 133-ish, right? If we can hold that, BA could try and work its way back to 140 and 2-hour squeeze top. With the goal of trying to get back to that daily 50, it'd be one of the few names on our list to actually get there in quite some time. If it gives out daily moving averages, probably heading back, to 130, 126 at first Keltner down. Cat made a decent move yesterday, opened, dumped straight to our level, and then ripped right back for new highs, getting to about 198, and those squeeze tops didn't, before it gets to 200. And now we're gapping back down at the lows from last week. So basically looking for Cat to hold this 2-hour and 2-day squeeze bottom at 190, 191. If we can hold here, we can make a good push out of this squeeze bottom. And, we're pretty much at third Keltner on Cat. So, looking for it to hold squeeze bottoms, head back up over key level, back to fill the gap. If we head lower, that third Keltner, probably going to be around 188. Google. Pretty darn strong yesterday. One of the only names in tech to get back to the daily 21, daily 15, and pretty much just held in between those all day. If you go look at this on a 1 minute, it just straight sideways in between these for most of the day. Just talking to the point that sometimes it is a journey to get to a target, and then we have to see what happens. So gapping it down back to about that daily 8. So if we can hold in that zone, about 195, I'd say down to yesterday's open around 280 or 2180. If we can hold in that range, we can work our way back up again to the target we made it to yesterday. But also being cognizant that if market's looking weak, it did make it back to the 21. And we are rejecting in a way because we're gapping with the market. So would like to see it hold 2180, 2190, head back up to that 2140, 2150 in an attempt to be one of the first tech names to try to make its way back to the daily 50. Banks just still looking weak as can be. They basically just dumped and chilled yesterday, and they are back near lows, so we just need them to stop going lower for any upside in the market. But as you can see, just settling in this range, so not a big interest for me. And again, JP Morgan looks a little bit stronger. So if you're going to play one of them, I'd play JPM. Meta, super weak yesterday. Another great call out by one of our members in the room. Nice trade there, coin. Recognizing that Meta basically hit the daily 8 and these squeeze tops and then rolled over. Great spot to go short. I know some folks hit those 160s and they went maybe about 200% in that nice drop. And if you left runners, nice little gap down past yesterday's low, which we're working our way back up to. That third Keltner. Going to be landing around 150 today. So if we are weak and start to roll back over again, likely going to land around 150. But if she gets back above yesterday's low and can turn it into support at around that 156, it might start working its way back up above 160. But not a big interest for me. It's showing relative weakness while other things show relative strength. Like Google and Microsoft that shot up and stayed up yesterday, and now they're just gapping down with the market. So looking for Microsoft to hold that 248 pre-market low to try to get back up above 250, 252, back where that daily 8 resides and at the top of that squeeze. If it gives out 248, we're likely coming down to the bottom of the squeeze or another test of lows. Netflix, another one showing relative weakness yesterday. Had this trend line that we were struggling to get out of on Friday, and then yesterday we gapped with the gap up. We opened near the daily 8 above that trend line, but as you can see, straight back to the trend line and riding it down, and we're still at it. But we are running right back into this 2-day squeeze bottom. So let's see if Netflix can hold its recent lows, the squeeze bottom, that 164. Could be in a good spot to go long on her again, now that the trend line from the highs is kind of running into a big fat squeeze bottom. Should we hit it, hold it, get through trend line, we could see a decent move for Netflix. But if we start to lose that 164, we do have that third Keltner down at 155, right at the extent of this squeeze cloud. So, NVIDIA. Unlike AMD that had to take a quick dip to the highs from Friday, NVIDIA just took off, but then came all the way back instead of staying up like some names did, but ultimately tried to hold and close at that daily 8. Now we're gapping back down to 160 near Friday's highs. So let's see if she wants to take a quick dip there today. If it can hold 160, 159, we can start making our journey back up to fill the gap, get back to 165, the daily 8. If we start to give those out, heading back down to 154. QQQ. All in all, just opening slightly lower than yesterday. I like this interesting little wick up here. Maybe a QQQ if we can hold our pre-market lows, 275, 276. We can go to try to visit this wick and get back to fill the gap north of 280. If we give out that 275, 276, we can be headed back to 272, 270. But basically opening in the middle of the 4-hour squeeze. So I'm going to be playing this small range, which is kind of yesterday's pre-market low, and today's, playing that range until it breaks. Going long near the bottom, locking up, and adding a short near the top. Roku. So, like we talked about, Roku had relative strength over Netflix yesterday, and that proved to be true. She shot right up and pretty much stayed up, getting back above the daily 21 and daily 15. So it was Google and Roku were the only tech names to get back above the 21 yesterday. Slight gap down, but opening kind of near that 21 and with the daily 8 below. Wouldn't be surprised for a slight rejection of the 21 and a dip back to the daily 8. But as long as we can hold there, getting through the 21, back through yesterday's high, to be one of the only other tech names close to its daily 50. So a little relative strength here in Roku. They did have that announcement, that partnership with Walmart. And, you know, in an up channel. So long side, this could be a good candidate. Let's see if it wants to take a dip to pre-market low and that daily 8. But yeah, relative strength. Shop, shop, shop. Kind of the same thing. We've got the catalyst of the split, which is less than a week away now. We were in this nice up channel. Let's see, now that we're gapping a little outside of it, if that becomes resistance. Looks like we're going to be opening near this daily Keltner. So let's see if it does a little chop around that daily Keltner and see if it wants to visit some pre-market lows before coming back to fill the gap. Get back above this daily 8 in a bid to try to work through this squeeze top to get back to the daily 21. But yeah, shop only has a week left, right? Next Tuesday. So only a couple of days left till this expiration, and next week's going to get messy. So we'll see if she's going to start making the move. She can move without the market. She's done it before. SPX, Gap City. Yesterday, opened with the gap. Tried to get through previous gap. Almost made it. Stopped short. You know, about, say, 10 or 12 points. So gap not quite filled. We are likely with this gap down going to be opening right near the top of this gap or slightly in it. So let's see if SPX can hold Friday's highs and this gap where we started yesterday. If not, it could slip back to fill that gap, back to 36.75, where it could catch a bounce and come back to work this gap again. But if SPX goes to fill the gap and can't hold at 36.75, we could be going right back down to key levels and that third Keltner. SPY. So SPY had a little gap with the over the weekend action, right? So SPY is now arriving back at that gap. So very much like we talked about over on SPX filling its gap, going to be opening right in or near the top of it. Let's see if it quickly works back above and pushes off of it, or if we're going to slip down to the bottom to fill the gap, basically continuing this down channel. We do have our 4-hour squeeze right below at 364, 363. If we start to fill, or if we go to fill that gap and can't catch a bounce once we fill it. But if we can hold near the top of this gap, open at it, and not really go to visit pre-market lows, we could just work right off that gap to get back to the squeeze top. Tesla, and then VIX, and we're done. Oh, monster move up for Tesla yesterday. I know some folks in the room caught it. We talked about in prep yesterday that below this zone at 654, 657, Tesla can just be loading up for a move. And once we are above it, it is a good sign to go back up. We got above it, was it last week? Got a great move up. Then gave out, market rolled back, yada yada. Anyway, yesterday, strong out the gate and just kept going right to our key 718, where it kind of turned it into support, but couldn't really get through that 730 and rolled back to the daily 21. Now we're opening slightly below the daily 15, daily 21 up above. Back at this key level, 690, 695. We have the daily 8 down at our other key level, that's 681. So let's see if Tesla can stay up north of the 690. I wouldn't be surprised for a little fade back to test, as long as we can hold 690. I think she can get back above 700, come back to fill the gap, and retest 718. If we start to give out 690, straight to 681. And yeah, if we start to give out 681, we could drop to that 657. Yeah, and 50-point ATR can get us about there. So, but no real squeezes intact except for that daily. And then VIX. VIX, chopped around 30 for quite some time. Then it gave out 30. But market really didn't head any higher. I mean, we did get back and set a new high, but then we rolled back over from it, right? As VIX got down to the squeeze bottom and curled back up off of it. So now we're gapping back up above 31. So on VIX, if we keep holding 31, we can work our way higher. We basically got a bounce off of the 21 and 8 yesterday. So if we continue to hold 31, VIX can head higher to 32, back to 33.5, where the top of the squeeze is, from squeeze bottom to top. But if it can stay below 32, maybe even 31.5, get back below 31, we could roll over back to squeeze bottom, and that 29.21, 28.80, which is kind of where the daily 21 and 15 have caught up to. We've got some magnets below. Let's see if the gap's going to hold and send us back up, or if it was just maybe to shake some folks out long and we curl back over back to the daily moving averages. We also have POC on VIX down in that zone as well. So that's what we're looking like. Hopefully this was helpful for everybody. Good luck today in the room. And if you ever miss prep or show up a little late, I always suggest going back to watch what you might have missed. I try to talk a little slow so that you can speed it up to 1.5 or 2 times, and it'll rattle through real fast. So good luck today, folks. We'll see you in the room. And remember, no beast, no feast.